When I like someone, I put them in the friend zone. When I don't like someone, I still put them in the friend zone. When I meet anyone, I put them in the friend zone. It doesn't matter who, they're all going in the friend zone.
All right, I want you to be honest with me. Are you scared of the friend zone? Are you scared of wasting your time, being made a fool of, being a simp? Are you scared of one-itis, being absolutely obsessed over a girl, and then ultimately her not returning your affections, and you've wasted all this time, passed up all these other opportunities? I was. It played massively into the strategy that I employed years ago back when I was single. As a young guy doing like the pickup artist stuff, I didn't want to waste any time. I was very, very upfront with my intentions. I would never approach women with a friendly vibe because I didn't want to get put in the friend zone. I'm like, yep, this is what I want. I'm making it clear. And, women would either sort of be on board or they're not. And a bunch of times you crash and burn. But at least in my mind, I was like, oh, well, at least I'm not wasting my time. Like, I've got my answer reasonably clear. Is this on or is this not? I did soften a bit over time because I found that high quality women didn't respond to, such a direct approach. But that direct approach where, either succeed or you crash and burn isn't for everybody. I had this guy reach out to me on Hey Hero, which, as a reminder, is the platform where you can ask me advice about your dating life, your relationships. I create a personalized video for you. But for him, he was trying that sort of pickup artist technique of just approaching lots of women and trying to numb himself out to rejection, and it was crippling him. His self-esteem was just crashing so hard, and so he wanted some advice from me. It's like, all right, how on earth am I meant to handle this? Emotionally, I'm devastated all the time. How can I stop getting rejected so much? How can I make this easier? It is possible. There are techniques that you can use to avoid crashing and burning, avoiding getting rejected, but still get to meet lots of women, have an abundant dating life. But it does require a more unique approach. And it's actually really well explained by my buddy Matt in one of our recent Patreon videos. So I'm just going to play that video for you now so you can hear what he has to say. Matt, were you the kind of guy who got rejected a lot in your dating life?
No, I didn't. And that's not to compliment myself for being so good, is what it was. Is I took a very gradualist approach in all of my approach. And what I would do is there's a very brief summary. I would only go so far as to know that my next move would be successful. So it took longer, but I got way less rejection. And I actually got a whole lot of practice because I just kept my practice at the level at which I was already succeeding. So very much what's called a zone of proximal development kind of thing. So my rejections were either extremely subtle to the point where I didn't feel terribly hurt by them, or they just didn't happen. A lot of guys who are just go full on cold approach, straight up, try to make things happen, full blast, they'll get rejected a whole lot more than I was because I just didn't do that approach for the most part.
Yeah, he's absolutely right. I got rejected a lot because back when I was a young guy doing the pickup artist stuff, I might approach like 20 women in a day. That's not going to work for everybody. That gradual approach that Matt was talking about is going to be much better suited for some guys. If you want to see the rest of that video where we explore that and Matt explains in more detail, it's available on my Patreon. But in this video, I want to expand on what Matt said and talk about why the gradual approach can actually be a lot more effective with women, as well as offer some other tips to avoid getting rejected too much. So if you're one of the guys listening to this who really hates getting rejected, you find that it just sends you into a tailspin emotionally, you don't know how to deal with that kind of failure, and you're desperate for some advice on how to minimize that happening outside of just, well, don't speak to women. If you still want to speak to women, you just don't want to get rejected so much, then this is the video for you. But before we get to that, we know that one of the biggest keys to not getting rejected to women is your appearance on the first impression. That idea that women are mythical goddesses who are above noticing whether or not a man is handsome or not has obviously been debunked. Women are as superficial as men. So if you want to be successful in the dating life, you've got to look good, which is why I'm grateful to Tish Hanley for sponsoring today's video. Tish Hanley has a range of skincare products specifically designed for men, and if you live inside the United States, they will ship it to your door directly. Their whole mission is to make skincare easy and accessible to men. That's why their starter pack comes with an easy to follow set of instructions. So it's like, well, when do I use the AM cream? When do I use the daily face wash? Don't worry, the instructions will tell you exactly how much to use and when to use it. I bet most guys listening to this would have no idea how many times per week they're meant to use an exfoliating scrub. But relax, you don't need to know. They've already figured it out for you. There's no pressure to figure out your own skincare routine. These guys have already done that. So you can just sit back, relax, do what you're told, and the result's going to be great skin. The reason why these guys have such a solid reputation online is because their products are genuinely fantastic. I use them. I love them. Check out these reviews recently from their website. Best I found, 5 stars. Makes my face feel refreshed, 4 stars. Product works great and leaves my face feeling great from the start and to the finish of my day, 5 stars. I love these guys. Tiege Hanley have been long and consistent supporters of this channel, and because they're sponsoring this video, they're giving my audience an awesome deal. If you click the link in the description box below, you're going to get a 30% discount on the first box that you order, and they're going to throw in a free gift as well. If you still don't have a skincare routine, now's the time to make a change. All right, we've got your skin sorted. That's a good start, but let's talk about some other ways for you to minimize rejection. In the first instance, the easiest thing for you to change is to stop doing cold approach, which if you're new to the channel simply means approaching a stranger, a woman who you don't know, because that's where your chances of rejection are most likely. She doesn't know you. You're just some random guy walking up to her on the street and starting flirting with her. It can be very disconcerting for a lot of women. Plus, she might be busy. Plus, she might have been having a bad morning. Plus, she might have a boyfriend. Understand, if you're doing cold approach, you have to expect rejection. You can't take it personally, but if you are the kind of guy who takes rejection personally, then just cut out the cold approach. I'm not saying don't approach women, but you've got to be a lot more smart about where you're doing it. You've got to do warm approach. That means approaching women at locations where there's a sort of assumed intimacy, you know, like at a party thrown by an extended social circle, in your university class, at the gym, anywhere where there's a slight sense of you're part of the same community and therefore more likely to be a friendly person or someone who's, you know, they're going to be nice to. In that instance, women are going to get concerned about their reputation. You know, they're less likely to be rude to somebody if it's potentially someone they're going to run into in the future. It's when you're a complete stranger to her that she feels free from any kind of social consequences and might reject you in a really brutal way. But if you meet a girl at a party and you start flirting with her, even if she rejects you, it's going to be in a much more subtle, respectful sort of way. So that's the first way that we can minimize rejection, but there's also some tips about when you're actually interacting with a woman that you can implement. Like, don't make your intentions known too early. Don't be explicit with your flirting until you're sure that the interest that you're feeling is reciprocal. Back in my pickup artist days, we would refer to this as checking if a woman has indicators of interest, you know, signs that she's taken a liking to you. Now, the more that you date, the more that you flirt with women, this just kind of becomes instinctual, right? Like you can just sort of feel it. There's a vibe, for lack of a better word, that you can pick up on. But if you're new to this and you actually need some obvious signs, look out for this kind of thing. Does she have decent eye contact? Like, is she actually engaged in the conversation with you? Or are her eyes, you know, constantly flitting about the room, looking for an escape, looking for a better option, looking for a more interesting conversation? Does she seem to be adjusting her appearance in any way? You know, like fiddling with her dress, you know, touching her hair. That sort of thing can indicate that she's feeling a little bit self-conscious, like, oh, like I like this guy, I want to make a good impression. How do I look again? Does she laugh at your jokes? Does she make an effort to keep the conversation going? Is she responding to your questions to her with questions of her own? Does she seem to be wanting to get to know you better? If you make a small suggestion to her, does she comply with that? Like, does she follow your lead? If you say something like, hey, let's just move over here where it's a bit quieter. Is she receptive to your touch? Like if you give her a playful push or you accidentally brush your arm against hers, you know, does she recoil or is she quite happy with that? I mean, this is just a guide. It's not definitive. And I'm not a pickup artist channel. Like I'm out of practice with this stuff. So if you want the cutting edge, like, you know, how to find indicators of interest, type it into Google or YouTube. You'll probably find men a lot better qualified than me to really go into the minutia, the detail of it. But the point that I'm trying to make is that if you want to minimize the amount of times that you're getting rejected, then make sure that you're only explicitly hitting on women who want you to hit on them. It's like what Matt was talking about in the video earlier. You know, you got to stay in your zone of proximal development. Like if you sense there's this much interest from her, then you can match that. But if you just charge ahead all to this place, then obviously you're going to get rejected. Another thing that I've noticed constantly occurring in like the stories that guys send me is that they're making it easy for women to reject them. You know, they're not doing themselves any favors. There are ways to communicate your interest to ask a woman on a date that is a lot more difficult for her to say no. For example, if you ask a girl a yes or no question, you know, 50-50, which way is it going to go? You're obviously increasing your chances of being rejected. Like if you ask a girl, can I have your phone number? She'll say yes or she'll say no. If you ask her, would you like to go on a date with me sometime? She'll say yes or no. That is amateur stuff. No men should be making these mistakes. One of the first things they teach you in the pickup artist stuff is that when you're trying to get a girl's phone number, you don't ask her, can I have your phone number? You hand her your phone and you say, put your number in so we can hang out sometime. Obviously, she can still say, oh, no, sorry, I'm not interested. But by your frame, you're almost assuming that it's obvious that the two of you are going to be hanging out in the future. And women follow that. They fall into the frame of the man if he's confident enough. That's not being manipulative. That's being masculine. That's creating a frame that women will enjoy being in, because that's what femininity does. It follows competent masculinity. You're also massively increasing your chances of rejection if, when you're asking a woman out, you're overly specific. Like if you say to a woman, let's meet at 2 p.m. on this day at this specific restaurant. The chances of her saying no to that are really, really high. What if she doesn't like the time? What if she doesn't like the day? What if she doesn't like the location? Any of those reasons will cause her to say, no, that doesn't work for me. And then you've been rejected. You're much more likely to get an affirmative response if you just say something vague like, hey, let's meet up sometime. It's easy for her to say yes to that because there's nothing specific. It's like, yes, in general, I'm keen for that idea that sometime in the future we'll be in the same place. After she's agreed in principle to meet up with you, then you can start to narrow it down, make it more specific. I work Mondays to Thursdays, Fridays and Saturdays are best for me. What days do you work? All right, awesome. Friday sounds like it works for both of us. Let's meet up in the city and then we'll walk around and find a place to have a bite to eat. Keep it vague, keep it casual. Don't give her lots of details that she can latch onto as a reason for rejecting you. I knew this one guy who would never even ask women on one-on-one dates because he felt like the chances of rejection were too high. So he'd always ask women that he was interested in to go to social events with other people there, just casually. He viewed it as a sort of intermediary step, like, oh, we're not really dating yet, but like I've shown enough interest that I'm inviting you to my friends' social events. I don't know if you need to take it that far, but if you're really, really sensitive to rejection, then that is an option available to you. It also gives you the chance to scope out a lot more data about whether or not the woman is interested in you. Like if you take her to a party, is she staying close to you? Does she want to engage with you more than the other people there? If she notices you chatting to other women, does she seem jealous? And if you're spending time with a woman and you're still unsure whether or not the vibe is friendly or romantic, you can always give her a commonality test. When she expresses that she likes something, point out that you like it too. Like, oh, wow, that's awesome. Like you and I are so similar. Because what you'll find is that women who are romantically interested in you will be thrilled at that connection being found and they'll sort of latch onto it. Whereas if she's not really feeling the vibe so much, she's just like, oh, I don't really like it that much. She'll put some distance. I mean, in a sense, I guess that's kind of a rejection because, she's failed the test. But if the point here is to preserve your ego so that you have enough strength to go and approach other women, you're not emotionally devastated, that's going to be a lot easier to stomach than just sort of saying, hey, I like you. I want you to be my girlfriend. Do you like me too? And having a girl just be like, no, I don't see you that way. Like that's the kind of rejection that really floors guys and takes them off the dating market for months while they recover. I mean, this is a slightly difficult video for me because on the whole, I'm a little bit more inclined to be like, hey guys, like, you got to steel yourself against rejection. You got to, be a little bit more numb to it. You got to toughen up a little bit. Like it's going to happen. This is the real world. But I did think that this video was important for guys who that advice is just not working for. Now, before I finish the video, I want to address potential criticisms that might be leveled at what I'm saying, in that this gradual approach that I'm talking about, not making your intentions clear, having these little tests, things like that might potentially be manipulative. I think some of the guys that come to my channel are sort of attracted to the sort of no-nonsense sort of approach that I have to all of this information because they're sick of all the games and all the vagaries. They're like, no, I'm done with that. I just want to tell women I like them and that should be enough. Usually guys who think that way congratulate themselves a lot on being like men who are really honest and have like lots of integrity. They don't play games and they're not manipulative and things like that. But I just haven't seen that. My repeated exposure, in talking to guys like that is that black and white approach of just naming your intentions up front, completely dismissing any kind of gradual approach, is that it typically comes from an insecurity. I know I said earlier that back when I was doing the pickup artist stuff, I was a little bit more like, hey, this is what I want. Are you keen? And like, I'd either succeed or I'd crash and burn. And at least part of that was because I didn't want to waste my time. I wanted to explore other options and I didn't want to be friend zoned. But inherent in that, I think there is some insecurity in that there's some discomfort in not knowing exactly where people stand. It's like, no, I want everything to be upfront because that's what makes me feel safe if I know where everybody stands. The reason why I said earlier that wasn't working on higher quality women is because there's a certain pleasure that women get out of the mystery, out of the chase, out of the initial courtship process, all that flirting. To just be like a bull in the china shop doesn't come across as masculine as you might imagine it to be, because there's a sort of fragility there. Like, hey, can't you just relax? Can't we just see what evolves naturally? If you're like, no, I need to know where this is going. it's not that strong. I know that the stereotype is that women are the ones who are like commitment crazy and men never want to settle down. But honestly, I've seen a lot of guys play out that more feminine role, I guess you could say. And then they're sort of desperate to define the relationship and know how she feels, way too early. They haven't actually spent the time getting to know the girl and vice versa enough to be able to know what their feelings should be. But even before that has been established, they want to understand and be able to categorize everything so that they can feel safe in their black and white, logic. So while there's obviously some merits to being direct and being confident and masculine, don't allow, your own internal virtue signaling to completely dismiss the idea of implementing some of the strategies I've spoken about in this video and adopting more of a gradual approach. You may find that your ability to implement those strategies is actually evidence of your growing maturity, and you may find that it increases the quality of women that you're attracting. A lot of high quality women simply aren't going to know how they feel about a man when it's still early days. They need some time to figure out how they feel. And yes, while that is going to scare some men because it rings of like friend zone dangers and all of those kind of concerns, once you've done this enough, you'll get to recognize inside yourself, you'll feel a sort of rhythm and a sort of pace that feels natural. Obviously, you're not going from first date to committed monogamy, in the space of 6 hours, but you'll be able to tell when things are generally progressing and you're demonstrating that you like each other at more and more appropriate intervals. Ultimately, it's all about finding the place where you're most comfortable on the spectrum of rejection, right? Like if you're the kind of person who's completely numb to rejection, doesn't bother you at all, then play the numbers game, work to your strengths. But if you're the kind of guy who really takes it personally, then you're going to need to take a more gradual approach. And where you exactly fit along the spectrum, that's going to be up to you. Now, in my latest Patreon video, I talk about a different type of rejection, how to handle it if the girl that you're dating has friends who don't like you. This is not the kind of topic that easily appeals to the YouTube algorithm because it's quite in-depth. But if you're the kind of person who really wants to understand this stuff at a deep level, then I highly recommend going over to my Patreon and signing up. We're talking about a much more advanced level of social dynamics that you need to master. My Patreon's just $5 a month, very affordable. Hundreds of exclusive videos. I think that the value for money is absolutely insane. I'd love to see you over there so that you can be a part of it.